See, I'm leaving mine on. All right. Ready, everybody?
Give it a good hit.
I'd like to call the meeting to order. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Supervisor Moore,
Here.
Councilwoman McNamara.
Here.
Councilman Iacilli.
Here.
Councilman Powell.
Present.
All right, let's proceed with the agenda review. Well, we have our councilman-elect in the audience, Rick Martell, so thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
So let's see, there's going to be 3 public hearings. One to consider the acquisition of 112 Mill Pond Lane in the hamlet of Watermill, New York, and to amend the CPF project plan and the CPF management and stewardship plan to include the property. The second is to amend the Town Code, Chapter 157, entitled Environmental Quality Review by adding a new subsection 8 designating battery energy storage facilities with an aggregate nameplate AC energy capacity in excess of 600 kilowatts, up to a maximum of 195, up to,
This one says 19 megawatts, but we're going to have to,
we want it to be 5.
yeah, but we already set the hearing, so we're going to have to open it and we'll take care of that.
Okay, up to a maximum of 19 megawatts as a type 1 action for purposes of seeker. And the third public hearing is to amend Town of Southampton Code, Chapter 312, entitled Vehicles and Traffic, Article 25, entitled Temporary Restrictions for Trial Programs by adding new subsection 312-113 entitled Canoe Place Blinking Light Program. And we'll have a walk-on resolution for that for
Resolution adoption, yeah.
Okay, so Town Board Resolution ID number 49366 to authorize change order 2 for the Town Hall sanitary system replacement with Adjo Contracting Corp.
Do we know when that's getting paved?
Well, it looks like it's all the base is down and compacted, so it could be any day. Bill, have you heard when?
Within the next few, probably next week they're going to start.
Yeah, and once that won't take long for the asphalt to go down.
No, go pretty quick.
Looking
And send-
forward to it.
Sorry. And Cindy, there are a couple of resolutions that you'll hear me say there's an amendment on it. I've spoken to Tatiana about some of them, so they might have already been made, but if not,
Could you speak up a little bit?
yeah, there's a couple of resolutions that have amendments on them, and I've spoken to Tatiana about making them in advance, but to the extent they're not, I'll sit with Kim and I'll just go through them with her.
Thank you.
I'm just passing. Okay. Town Board Resolution ID number 49351, co-sponsored by Council Members Iacilli and McNamara, to authorize change order for professional services related to the engineering design of the new sanitary system at the Southampton Animal Shelter with the Rayner Group, PE and LSP LLC.
Town Board Resolution 49353. This is to authorize payment of outstanding HLP Inc. invoices for Chameleon software products for annual software support and maintenance agreement with the animal shelter.
Town Board Resolution ID number 49301, co-sponsored by Council Members Pell and McNamara, to authorize purchases of HVAC and air conditioning service and new installation from Commercial Instrumentation Services using the Suffolk County contract.
Town Board Resolution ID 49309, authorized purchases of census water meters and accessory equipment or a reasonable equivalent and repair to meter reading equipment from Core and Maine LP using the Town of Riverhead contract.
Town Board Resolution ID number 49357, to authorize purchases of snowplow and spreader parts from the Suffolk County contracts. Town Board Resolution ID number 49354, to authorize the supervisor to execute any and all documents with Paymentus Corporation.
Town Board Resolution ID 49372, authorize supervisor to sign a contract with Ryan D'Amico, DBA Dynamics Productions, New York, LLC, for sound system at Good Ground Park. Town Board Resolution ID 49374, co-sponsored with Councilman Iacilli. Authorize supervisor to sign contract with D&B Engineers and Architects to provide professional services related to Poxbog Golf Center parking lot upgrades and clubhouse design.
Town Board Resolution ID number 49388 to authorize the purchase of general building maintenance services involving new construction, reconstruction, and demolition from Renew Contracting and Restoration, Inc., using the Bay Shore UFSD contract. Town Board Resolution ID number 49356 to authorize the supervisor to execute a contract with Advantage Title as it relates to the title search services for the Fire Island Inlet to Montauk Point FIMP project.
Town Board Resolution ID 49396, co-sponsored with Councilman Iacilli. Authorize the supervisor to execute a license agreement with Bridgehampton Tennis and Surf Club for 2025 spring lifeguard training. That's a new agreement. They're going to actually allow us to train our lifeguards there, so we can, for the first time, and I think forever, have a training session on the east side of the canal.
That's great.
Which we're hoping will get more guards that way.
Mm-hmm.
Town Board Resolution ID 49355. Authorize the supervisor to execute a license agreement with Suffolk County Community College for use of the Eastern Campus Pool for 2025 spring lifeguard training.
Town Board Resolution ID number 49387, co-sponsored by the entire board, to authorize the supervisor to execute a no-cost contract extension with First Coastal Corp. For coastal engineering services in connection with the Sagaponack Beach Erosion Control District. And Town Board Resolution ID number 49386, co-sponsored by the entire board, to authorize the supervisor to execute a no-cost contract extension with First Coastal Corporation for coastal engineering services in connection with the Bridgehampton Beach Erosion Control District. Town Board Resolution ID number 49384, co-sponsored by the entire board, to authorize the supervisor to execute a no-cost contract extension with the First Coastal for coastal engineering services in connection with the Bridgehampton Beach Erosion Control District Phase 2. And Town Board Resolution ID number 49385, co-sponsored by the entire board, to authorize the supervisor to execute a no-cost contract extension with First Coastal for coastal engineering services in connection with the Sagaponack Beach Erosion Control District Phase 2. Town Board Resolution ID number 49398, to authorize the supervisor to execute a release agreement with Prime Government Solutions, Inc. Town Board Resolution ID number 49352, to authorize the supervisor to execute an agreement with Daniel R. Velasco, P.E., PC, as it relates to the Fire Island Inlet to Montauk Point project. Town Board Resolution ID number 49371, to authorize the supervisor to execute any and all documents relating to an agreement with Telview Corporation to continue to provide software support and software maintenance for Southampton Sun 20 TV.
Town Board Resolution 49389, co-sponsored with Councilwoman McNamara. Authorize the supervisor to sign an agreement with Fire Safety and Inspection Services, LLC, for live fire training structure evaluation.
Town Board Resolution ID number 49368, to authorize the supervisor to sign agreements with surveying firms for the Fire Island Inlet to Montauk Point project.
Town Board Resolution 49250, co-sponsored with Councilman McNamara. Award and authorize supervisor to sign contract with Turner Cesspool Service, Inc. as primary vendor and Clear River Environmental Service Corp. as a secondary vendor for on-call service for the transportation of the landfill leak.
Town Board Resolution ID 49303, co-sponsored with Supervisor Moore. Award and authorize the purchase of one 2025 Ford F-150 Super Cab from Hempstead Lincoln Mercury Motors Corp. using New York State OGS contract for vehicles Class 1 through 8 statewide. Town Board Resolution ID 49293, co-sponsored with Supervisor Moore. Award and authorize the purchase of one 2025 Ford F-250 Super Cab from Hempstead Lincoln Mercury Motors Corp. using New York State OGS contract for vehicles Class 1 through 8 statewide.
Town Board Resolution ID number 49302 to recall and amend Resolution number 2024-1494 to reject bid award for fencing and stakes for lines 4 and 6. Town Board Resolution ID number 49370 to recall and amend Town Board Resolution 2025-289 to authorize the supervisor to sign a consultant agreement with Michael J. Zarro to assist with the Southampton Town Police Department Records Management Software, Computer-Aided Dispatch, and Building Expansion Project. Town Board Resolution ID number 49329, 2025 notice to bidders for Mercury Marine engines.
Town Board Resolution 49379, 2025 notice to bidders for requirement contract for miscellaneous concrete construction.
Town Board Resolution ID number 49349, the 2025 notice to bidders for the Bridgehampton Community House Column Restoration. Town Board Resolution ID number 49254, the 2025 notice, co-sponsored by Council Members Pell and McNamara, and it's the 2025 notice to bidders for 8 AMS outside vending machines.
For the green bags.
Yeah,
Yes.
this is going to be great. So we'll have vending machines at the transfer station selling the green bags, so people don't have to hunt them down.
Town Board Resolution 49382, co-sponsored with Councilman Wyman McNamara. 2025 notice to bidders for Sock Master 12 auger bucket slit sock filter.
Sock filler. Town Board Resolution ID number 49327 to accept the Justice Court Assistance Grant and amend the 2025 budget. Town Board Resolution ID number 49375 to amend 2024 budget for various departments. Town Board Resolution ID number 49397 to amend the 2025 operating budget for unallocated pay-as-you-go cost center 9900. Town Board Resolution ID number 49390 to amend the 2025-2029 capital budget for 271 Flanders Road Building Renovations Project. Town Board Resolution ID number 49381 to amend the 2025-2029 capital budget for CPF project Town Hall Sanitary System Upgrade. And Town Board Resolution ID number 49325 to amend the 2025-2029 capital program for prior funding projects. Town Board Resolution ID number 49328 to authorize the general fund pay-as-you-go purchase of a used Ford F-450 truck. Town Board Resolution ID number 49221, a continuation of legal services by Sir Tillman, Balin, Adler, and Hyman LLP as it relates to Rose Hill Road, Watermill, New York for 2025. This Town Board Resolution ID number 49392, we might have some changes, so it may not be on the agenda for next week. Town Board Resolution ID number 49299 to accept the retirement of James Shunk, Automotive Equipment Operator in the Highway Department. Town Board Resolution ID number 49373 to amend the 2025 adopted budget for salary and related benefits for legislative aid. Town Board Resolution ID number 49277 to appoint Ryan Corwin to Maintenance Mechanic 4 in the Parks Department. Town Board Resolution ID number 49278 to appoint Eric Johnson to Maintenance Mechanic 3 in the Parks Department. Town Board Resolution ID number 49160 to appoint Ethan Rose to Maintenance Mechanic 1 in the Parks Department. Town Board Resolution ID number 49360 to appoint Melissa Chirillo to Administrative Assistant in Municipal Works. And Town Board Resolution ID number 49376 to appoint Michael Schermeyer to the Building Inspector in the Building Department. Town Board Resolution ID number 49279 to appoint Stephanie Haroon to driver messenger position in senior services.
Town Board Resolution ID 49358, attendance at Policing the Mentally Ill course in New York, New York.
Town Board Resolution ID number 49391 to authorize personnel from the Town Comptroller's Office to attend the New York State Government Finance Officers Association 2025 Annual Conference.
Town Board Resolution 49315, co-sponsored with the entire board. This is a notice of public hearing to amend Town Code Chapter 312 entitled Vehicles and Traffic, Article 22 entitled County Road 39 by adding new subsection 312-107.4 entitled Temporary Traffic Mitigation PM Pilot Program. That's in reference to the program outlined by the Highway Superintendent at our previous work session.
And that'll be April 8th. We'll hear more on that. Town Board Resolution ID number 49399, co-sponsored by the entire board. Notice of public hearing to consider amending Town Code Chapter 50, Open Government, to discontinue video conferencing at public meetings.
Town Board Resolution ID 49377, resolution setting public hearing to consider amendments to Chapter 111 and 312 in connection with parking by permit only regulations at beaches, parks, and waterways. This is, we had the work session on this to basically make all of the parking restrictions standardized across the town, so there's not different dates and different times at all the different beaches.
Yeah, it's good one.
Could you get me to that, please?
Certainly.
Town Board Resolution ID number 49255. Notice of public hearing to accept a deed of residential fee from Ross N. Conklin for property to be maintained as open space located at Watermill, Suffolk County Tax Map number as indicated pursuant to Southampton Town Code, Section 244-4, obtaining a development rights certificate, and Section 247, General Municipal Law of the State of New York.
Town Board Resolution 49363, authorize the use of community housing funds for the acquisition of property located at 90 North Sea Mecox Road in North Sea. This is again in reference to previous meeting that we had with Curtis and Karabach, our housing director. Also, Town Board Resolution ID number 49367. This is to authorize the use of community housing funds for the development of the property located at 140 Maple Avenue in Flanders, also discussed at the previous meeting. Town Board Resolution ID number 49364, authorize the use of community housing funds for the acquisition of property located at 205 North Sea Mecox Road
Wendy, could I be added to those three?
in North Sea.
We should probably do the entire
Yes, the whole board, please.
for all three.
Yeah, this was also discussed at the previous meeting as well. Great programs.
Yes.
We're moving ahead with that. Okay, so we're a little early, 5 minutes, but maybe we could call Julie and see if she's available to come up. Oh, I did hear from Nick that they are planning to do the paving next week. That'll be a relief to get the parking lot
Yes.
back.
Restriped. Plus, when they do that, restripe out front too. Visitors,
Yeah, make it clear it's for visitors.
yeah.
Kelly's over there.
Thank you for coming today.
My pleasure, as always.
Nameplate.
Oh, look.
Julie, I think you guys
You can come right up.
Yes.
Good morning.
Hi, come on up. Yes, we're going to talk about the Landmarks Board recommendations for historic landmark designation for the Diamond Berry Barn and Studio and the Rainer Fish House. So we've got Ed Wisnowski, Chair of the Landmarks Board, Julie Green, Town Historian, and Kelly Doyle, Assistant Town Attorney with us today.
Welcome.
Thank you. Hello, everybody.
Is it Diamond or Dean? Diamond, right? Diamond?
Diamond.
Okay, who's going to introduce these topics to us?
Why don't you start with the Rainer Fish House?
Want to do
since
the Rainer
you
Fish House?
Rainer Fish
prepared
House?
the report.
Okay, that's a separate one. Let me get them. Absolutely. So this is a application for designation of a historic landmark. And the public hearing is scheduled for April 8th. So this is just a work session to talk about the historical significance of the property and why it was recommended to be designated as a landmark.
And we also own the property.
We own the property, that's right. So there are two separate smaller properties, and then there's the marina just to the south. There is a private boat slip in between, but for the most part, we own that shore property. So this is the Rainer Fish House. It is located at 4 Beaver Dam Road in West Hampton. It's on 0.02 acre of land along the Beaver Dam Creek. It has been identified as a historic resource and is a contributing structure in the town's maritime history. The property has been evaluated by the Landmarks and Historic District Board, and it was considered a potential town resource on our AKRF study in 2014. Although it's not particularly noteworthy.
Sorry.
It's okay.
I mean, this thing is, this looks like it's just fallen in on itself.
So as I just on cue, as although this is particularly not a architecturally noteworthy structure, it is the last vestige or one of the last vestiges of this type of fishing community for small fisheries that took place here on Beaver Dam Creek in the town of Southampton. So it possesses lots of characteristics for its historical significance. This is the second Rainer Fish House that we know of. There was one that was built about 1860, which was wiped out during the hurricane of 1938. And they immediately rebuilt the fish house. It wasn't supposed to be any sort of some kind of a barn-like structure, built about 1939, and probably from remnants of debris that washed up from things that were destroyed during the hurricane. So just a little bit about the family. So this was built by William Fletcher Rayner to replace, as I mentioned, the 19th century fish house that was destroyed. It was constructed partially over the water and braced for support in severe weather, so it was built a little bit stronger than the first one. The fish house was used to store and repair fishing gear and provided shelter for local fishermen to work and socialize as a way of life in Southampton town, and is worthy of preserving this way of life for future generations. So it's really kind of a historic resource as a viewing potential. So the builder, William Fletch Rayner, was a fisherman, an engineer. He was a chauffeur, and for many years, from 1930 to 1959, when he passed away, he was a town trustee. So he was active in the town in civic matters. He descended from a long line of the Rayners. The Rayners descended or settled in they were the first family to settle in what is now the West Hampton Beach area in about 1707. On lands along what was once called Appacuck Creek, which is now known as Beaver Dam. In about 1712, they started to build permanent homes here. Appacuck, just for background, Appacuck is an Algonquin word for flaggy land, for the abundance of cattail reeds and flags that were used in weaving maps and cover wigwams by the Native Americans, the Shinnecock and the Pusatuck that were in the area. was kind of the dividing line between the two tribes as well, Beaver Dam Creek. So this family has been there and started settling in 1746. The area was given the use of the stream for building dams and mills for construction of grist mills and to support the colonial settlement of the Beaver Dam area. So the families were starting to move in, and infrastructure was being put in place to establish certain settlements. So a grist mill would be put on Beaver Dam Creek, a little bit north of this, as a way to bring people and all their farming. The grist mill would be used to grind their grain, and that's how settlements were all started. They were given certain areas of land to establish that. Once that was established, the settlement could really focus on the creek and use the creek for fishing, which it did. The Rainers did for the next 150 years or so. One of the important notes for the fishing community at the time, prior to the railroad coming in, it was just really sustenance fishing for local community, the local area. Once the railroad came in 1870, changed everything out here on the east end of Long Island, and it provided them access to get their the fish into the city quickly, and the city at that time was burgeoning. The city was just, migration and immigration to the city was burgeoning at the time. So those markets were able to use our local fish. So the commercial fishermen really started to grow out of this. So the sturgeon fishing became popular in the late 1800s and was practiced from the beach using gill nets during May and June. The nets were then stored in this fish house during the rest of the year. When the sturgeon fishing declined in the early 1900s, fishing for cod and using of scroll lines, trawls, and gill nets became popular, both of which from the beach in Moriches Bay. And all of the nets would go here during the winter time when they were not fishing, would be repaired. So the Rainer Fish House was kind of a little community of fishermen that would get together, gossip, get the news of the day, talk about local politics, and all that stuff happened here at the Rainer Fish House. It's something that we no longer really have, this type of community along the creek. So and so traditionally, these fish houses, as you noted, it's kind of in bad shape. Were basic utilitarian structures located in areas along the shore, convenient to fishing grounds, and they were built out onto the water with a dock for easy access for boats. They served as the base of small-scale fishing operations for the community of fishermen, sometimes outfitted with a potbelly stove, provided a space for fishermen to come in out of the weather and swamp fishing stories. So they're ramshackled in appearance. That's not by accident. They do by nature of where they exist along the water, they're going to take a little more battering than your average structure. So again, this one was built after the hurricane of 1938. And as the fishing declined in the late 50s, and with Fletch Rayner's passing in 1958, his son, Charles Marvin Rayner, was given the fish house. Property was sold to his son. And not only did he take over the fishing operation, but he also became a town trustee. So he took his dad's spot on as well. So it was used up until 2020 when it was sold to the town for preservation purposes. And we do have, on the CPF side of things, we are working with the steward, the Moriches Bay project, to use the site, basically the grounds and the access to the water for educational purposes.
They're installing a flip scene.
Yeah.
I think they had they had plans, I guess, in the future to do like touch tanks or something.
Yes. Yeah. So the structure isn't going to change much. It will be ADA compliant. They will be working on plans. I think there are plans on the back of the report that shows how we're going to move forward with that. And of course, that's, we need to do, in order to do these things, we need to be landmarked.
What? Yeah.
That's pretty much the history. I think Ed can talk to more of that
Well,
and
yeah, let me just indicate, while the building is not an icon of any kind of architecture other than practical working structure. It's like many barns that were to be found in Southampton town. And a lot of people's reactions to them would be, on first sight, you know,
do you say?
ramshackle, shed-like, take them down. Myself, having grown up on a farm, the farmhouse where I live used to have a corn crib outside, and my father took it down just because it was no longer useful for the farming that he did. And on other farms he had, there were these rundown buildings, but some of them went back to the late 1700s. And over the period of years, they were just used for incidental purposes, store equipment or supplies on a farm. But you know, the town was rural in character. That is its history and its agriculture and fishing that's there. I think many people look at the concept of landmarks more in an urban context, where you have masonry built structures that have been around for a long period of time and have been designed by some noted architect and represents a kind of important piece of history for urban context. And in a rural context, history is a bit different. Things, you know, come and go, and were built in a practical circumstance where they don't always stand up very easily to the passage of time. There are many historic barns. We'll be talking about one in a minute for the Diamond barn, but I go back to an incident back in 2012 or so, 2013, when the Topping Rose house was being renovated, made into the Topping Rose Inn, and there was an early 1700 barn on that property that everybody thought was a piece of junk. As they were remodeling it, they wanted to, and they did eventually tear it down, but the chairperson of the Landmarks Board at the time, Sally Spanberg, in a critical rush to try and save it, because the barn, among other things, had been associated with an early tavern and merchandising operation where it had received rum and molasses from the Caribbean over Merchant's Path from North Sea Harbor into Bridgehampton. But anyway, they agreed to disassemble the barn. They moved it across the street to the Nathaniel Rogers house without, of course, any plan for restoration. And there it stood for a pile of wood, stood for a year or so. And eventually somebody, and this was during a period of time, the Nathaniel Rogers house was undergoing renovation, so there was no real protection or anything, but some of the material was stolen for use by unknown persons, so gradually the pile diminished, and then eventually what was there rotted away. But on the walls of the barn, the owners of Topping Rose said was inscribed a lot of information that, you know, the price of sugar at a certain time and the names of certain people who were traders at that period of time. But all that got lost.
The library had I could talk about this little barn forever.
Was it documented by photographs at least?
It was documented by photographs, not a lot of photographs. Unfortunately, they had an idea of what they were going to do with this barn, and then it just never came to fruition, and it just rotted. But there is a ledger that is at the Hampton Library in Bridgehampton that is associated with the family that owned that, and we know what they traded: whale oil and rum and services, and it's all wrapped up and related to Captain John Hulbert, who is our Revolutionary War patriot, who had the first flag. So when we lose these structures, we lose all of that history along with it. So he wasn't just a captain in the Revolutionary War thing, but his family ran this tavern in Bridgehampton that was, those roads, Bridgehampton Turnpike and the road, Montauk Highway to East Hampton. Those were huge crossroads. We have little triangular commons that was where the militia banded and practiced together. So there's lots of history that when we lose these vestiges, yes, it may look like a ramshackle shed or barn, but it really has a purpose that reminds us of our history. This has nothing to do.
Right. This doesn't have to do
an
with
example of what happens.
I just want to clarify that this has nothing to do with. This does not go back to the Revolutionary War.
No.
Okay.
This was a second building built after
1930s.
1930s.
So
1939.
let me just ask you just on some of the 2022 photographs that you have here.
Mhm.
Are there other homes here? It looks like they have docks. Is that
So it's just the one. So the
because I see a boat here,
So I'm just trying to see if I had anything with the bridge.
another house
So if
overlooking?
you look on, there's this page here that shows, so we put up a sign so that people are crossing. This is South Road right here to the left, so you cross over the bridge. And there is nothing, there's the Rayner Boathouse, there's a boat slip, and then there's the town marina.
So there's a marina there.
Yes. And then there are houses on the west side of the little.
Used to be another fish
Beaver
house
Dam Road.
called the Winters. You ever heard of that one? That was torn down, I say, maybe roughly 20 years ago.
Yeah. I did some of the
On the
research
canal.
looking to find.
West Hampton was
Yeah.
owned by the Winters family, Ed Winter. And actually, for years, the Gilnut Reel was still sitting out there.
Right, they owned the land on the other side of Beaver Dam Creek, down to the water. But I doing the research and Ed and the Landmarks Historic District Board, I really wasn't able to find anything that's still standing. Sandy came through too and destroyed a lot as well. So this is really the only one that I could find that was associated with the family that's been settled the area in the colonial era in the late 16, early 1700s. So their history on Beaver Dam Creek and Uppercut Creek is significant. Yeah.
I love that we're going from a fish house to a dairy barn.
So the second one is actually just to landmark a structure, not the entire property. And this would be known as the Diamond Dairy Barn and Studio, located at 18 Flying Point Road in Watermill. And I'll let Ed tell you about the history.
Yes, there's an extensive report, mostly done by Susan Sherry Clark of the Landmarks Board with respect to the Diamond Barn. To put it a little bit first in context.
But this is very familiar to me because we did the farmhouse, right?
Yes, as I, unfortunately, usually I plug into a monitor for image displays, but this is the outline of the barn on the property. And if you are aware locally, this is a house that has been landmarked as the Diamond Farmhouse. And next to it is a new house that was built. And the barn of the original farm is located on an access road off of Flying Point. It's somewhat, the other buildings, the farmhouse that's been renovated and landmarked and the new house that's been put there as a structure mask a little bit of the barn, so it's not immediately available to the line of sight of people traveling on Flying Point Road. The Diamond family goes back a long way. The farm has been active in one fashion or another as a dairy farm or for fuel production since the early 1850s or so. And the Diamond family was active in civic life as well in Southampton town. This barn has been converted, as some of the pictures I think may show in the report, into an artist studio. And that took place about 1986 or so, I believe, by an artist named Lynn Ferrante. And she subsequently sold it, and it became a operating ground for a photographer in the same barn. And of more recent vintage, it is owned by now the heirs of Bucker. Troy Bucker was now the owner. It's officially, I think, in a trust. And he's the owner who applied for landmark designation for this project. With respect to the barn, it's only the structure that is being proposed for landmarking. There is another house on the same property, which I believe is going to be part of eventually a subdivision of the parcel itself, leaving the barn studio as a separate entity. We don't see that as a particular problem associated with the significance of the barn. The individuals involved are active in what you might call a third industry besides agriculture and fishing, and that is the production of culture. Artists and writers, sculptors, and others have made the east end of Long Island a significant area for cultural dynamics of the country, actually. The recommendation from the Landmarks Board in looking at it was that the barn is significant because it testifies to the agricultural history and the economy of Southampton town for well over 100 years in association with the Diamond family. The artists involved, Lynn Hefner Ferrante and Ron Buchter and Harold Buckner, they're two different names and two different families, also have national as well as local significance in the arts in Southampton town. And as Hal Buckner was partnered with the widow of Roy Lichtenstein, the artist, and she has had a major impact both in financing and philanthropic activity for artistic endeavors at universities around the country, as well as the Stony Brook University campus in Southampton, the Smithsonian, and the Parish Museum as well in Southampton. So she is a notable person, and I don't know if we included her obituary in the report, but, which outlines a lot of that.
Yeah, she's pretty significant in her own right, Dorothy. Yeah.
And just as another little footnote to barns and so on, she, as head of the Lichtenstein Foundation, purchased another barn where the works of Roy Lichtenstein are kept and maintained in Southampton town. It's an old potato barn, and it was converted. It has a residential unit for the caretaker of the works of art that are stored there. So, barns and adapted barns are pretty important too in terms of the life of Southampton town and the life of the arts here.
Did the conversion in 1989 to a residence and an art studio impact the ability to landmark the structure? Did they make changes within?
Well, there were some, and there have been changes, some internal structural changes. The internal skeleton of the barn, the framing inside can be seen, and I've forgotten the pictures that were part of the original report, but and the exterior, there's been some exterior transformation of the barn too in terms of entrances and windows. But there are, I might actually have some pictures here, which again, I wish we had the monitors working, but you might be able to see, this is the barn. There's another artist now who wants to buy the barn as a landmarked structure and use it for both production and display of art. The party is a sculptor, and so he's already has his sculptures displayed on the grounds. They're modern in character, let's say.
So this is not going to be owned by the town?
No, this is this is private ownership that's involved, and the buyer that will potentially buy the landmark structure will be a fourth artist that would be in a sequence of using this converted barn into a studio arrangement. There are elements of the converted barn that obviously don't match what was the barn that was being used by the cows when there was a dairy. There is now an elevator inside the barn for what was the present owner who passed away, who needed it to get to the second floor studio area where he had his area for painting. And there were some windows and doors added. The story is that they came from the West Hampton Library as repurposed construction material at the time of the barn's conversion into a studio arrangement. I'm not sure that we have the official testimony on that, but that's the story that I was told about the windows on it.
From the first little library in West Hampton, not the one that was recently renovated, but the little guy that was there prior to that.
Yes, for example, these would not be windows natural to an original dairy barn there.
But the board is recommending
For the structure only, in order to allow the possible separation of a more modern house that's also on the same property at the time.
I do want to say that certainly the individuals involved, the names Conklin, I'm very familiar with that. That certainly has historical significance. But I also want to point out to my fellow colleagues too, from I think it's important just to note that the board from C through E on this particular application did not find it applicable. And also in the previous application, B and D also not applicable. So I'm not discrediting it. I think both, we have to acknowledge the historical significance of our fisheries. I think that's critical to the identity of Southampton. And obviously our farming. Agriculturally, it is significant, but I just want to make sure that the public is aware, we're aware, my colleagues, just going forward.
But it doesn't have to meet all of these. It
No.
just- Yeah.
I just want to make sure that that's clarified.
Code indicates meets one or more.
Yeah.
And
of
it's
those
pretty rare to meet
five.
all of them.
I have never seen one.
Exactly.
We're getting there. Yeah, age is not even a criterion. So, but we like to start with, prioritize the things in the town that are of a certain age.
Before it's gone. Condos. I mean, Greenport had a lot of fish houses and oyster houses around the waterways. Now they're all condos.
I think the same thing as I recall, the state of Maine
Yeah.
has also landmarks of fish houses.
Yeah, they have districts of fish houses.
Yeah, and have sought to preserve them too.
So the current owner's asking us to,
For the diamond.
For the
bar.
Diamond
Yes.
Barn, yes,
Yeah,
this
it's
is
private.
owner-initiated application.
and then they're planning to transfer it to a new owner who's wants to keep it
Right.
designated. Yeah. All right.
And it goes way back to the Hildreth family. That was colonial deeded land to Thomas Hildreth and his family. And we have a Hildreth diary from the Daniel Hildreth lived from 1810 to 1880. So he kept a diary where the entire century is documented. He dug wells, so he went all over the town digging wells, and so you know who he was dealing with. And it talks about in his diary them selling the 66 acres to the Diamond family. So there's lots of history on this property, and it's one of those vistas, right? So you see that gambrel roofed barn, which is significant for our agricultural.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank
So
you.
we'll have the public hearing and you'll be back for that?
Yes.
Well,
April 8th, I
actually,
think?
I had asked another board member, Vicky Kahn, who has also been involved in the Diamond Barn
Uh-huh.
landmark designation activity but she was busy here, but she might be there for the public hearing.
Yeah, I think we'll do what we did the last time and just refer everyone to this work session. I mean, because there's no point in giving the whole.
Right, we don't need to do
The full
it.
spiel again, yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to say before
Well,
I
you'll
wrap.
have a presentation though, right, at the public hearing?
Sure. Yep.
It goes on
Much
record.
briefer.
And I just wanted. Has anybody seen the Alewives running?
No.
Down at our Byron Young passage. That's from yesterday. So they're reusing the ladder that we put in. So this is the first time that they're using the ladder
We're
for
really
eels.
using it. That's so
We're
exciting.
trying to do a few more.
Yeah, it's just
I was excited. I heard peepers last night. It's like
the
spring.
osprey are back, and
Today is the first day of spring, right?
yeah, the first day of spring. But if you get a chance, it's right across from the county center in
Yeah.
Riverside. So.
Oh, is this the one that the seal came up and ended up in the traffic circle?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe. I mean, it's on Little River, which is right by that traffic circle in Riverhead.
Yeah, they ended up with the seal in the traffic circle that came up the fish passage.
They also go up by North Sea too.
Yeah, well, I went to check out North Sea, and the baykeeper was saying that the alewives at North Sea sometime, for whatever reason, are running at night. But you can see the vestiges of the raccoons
Yeah.
that have gotten them, and the bird, the osprey.
Ospreys.
There's fish kind of all over.
Yeah, they pretty much run on the tide because they need water.
Yes, because that one rises a little bit. It's a little bit closer to the tide. But it's just really interesting to see, thousands of them trying to make their way
I used to
through
bring my
this.
kids down there when they're little to watch them.
Yeah, because from what I understand is Byron Young, who worked for, he would actually catch them because they couldn't get through. And he would catch them and cross the dam and put them, on the other side, all day long. He would just move them physically, by hand. And these fish now that are coming back to spawn, they're
Grandkids.
imprinted because that's where they were spawned. So they need to get back to where, and it's just an amazing thing. So I was well educated yesterday. I saw some people walking down in there. I was going to the county center to do a deed search and just happened to see a little DEC car and was like, what's going on over here?
We're also working with trying to do a fish ladder over Trap Pond. Yeah. Because when we replace the culvert underneath the road and put a fish ladder, try to put a fish ladder going in there.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's a
One
little
up in
closer to
Flanders,
home. I
too.
can keep an eye on that one.
Thanks for bringing those pictures. That's
Oh,
fun
sure.
to see.
They're not great, but they're just thousands of fish.
Yeah.
And they do have a camera. So on YouTube, you can see they have an underwater camera showing them.
Oh,
Some of them go in
really?
and kind of scoot back out, kind of like, I'm not sure of this. But yeah, I think once one goes, and eels
Is
as
it on the
well.
DEC website?
I just put in Byron Young
Okay.
fish passage and a YouTube clips came up.
Cool.
So just wanted to share that.
Excellent.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your proposals.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good morning, congratulations, how are you?
Janice, you can come up.
Thank you. I just realized I asked Seth for EAF blank ones, and he gave me battery storage ones, so he's just coming up with a new batch. But I have these at least to talk about. The form is always the same, just disregard the content right now
Okay.
until he gives us our blank ones.
Sorry.
No, where is he gonna give that to Christine?
Sorry.
Well, these are battery ones, but it's always the same. So we're gonna go over the EAF form for the code related to amortization of non-conforming sand mines. Hi. Everything okay?
You have a,
Yeah, but I just stepped out for a second.
Oh, I was just handing out forms. I'm sorry.
you have an extra one for.
Yes. So all I said, Supervisor Moore, is good morning, and that while I was just waiting for Seth to come back up with blank ones of these, but I have the battery ones by mistake I grabbed, and this is the purpose of this. This morning is that you would like to go over the full EAF Part 1 for the legislation related to amortization of non-conforming sand mines.
Because we want to go over it before we vote for it. Vote
Right.
on it.
So I'm here to go over that form with you today. What we do is we complete part 1. So SECRA requires you to take an action. You normally get these on email from me showing, part 1s, the part 2s, and the SECRA, what it was required is a reasoned elaboration for your decision making. And that reasoned elaboration is supposed to take into consideration environmental, social, and economic considerations. So with that, part 1 is usually, when you're undertaking an action, it's just who the agency is. Then on the second page, it talks about what approvals the action requires. So in this case, the one we're looking at is battery storage, but he's coming up in a minute with a blank one. So in this case, the only agency here that's taking on this action is you. You already coordinated the action with the DEC because they have mine land reclamation under the ECL. So you said, DEC, are you wanting to be lead agency for our legislative action? And you did not hear back. So you assume lead agency in that case. You wait 30 days for an agency to respond to you. The response is sometimes they just don't write back. If they care, they'll get in touch, and we know that. But usually they just don't. So then that's why it's called assume. We'll take that assumption that we're a lead agency, it's our action, and we're gonna move forward. We're gonna do the environmental review. So that happened. So now you're at the point of now you're doing the environmental review for this action. And so so the first instance when you are the lead agency and you're undertaking this type of review is to classify the action. Initially, we classified the action as a type 1 action because we looked at it as well. So every secret action has, it's either, here's Seth with my blank forms. Thank you, Seth. Every time you undertake an action, thank you, Seth. But anyway, now you have our part 1s from the battery stuff. That's why, for your
All
files.
things battery, sorry.
You didn't know what I meant. Thank you, Seth. So when we undertake a secret action, we look at part 617 under the law, which classifies an action as on a type 2 list, which means no environmental review, or a type 1 list, which means most likely required to have a heightened environmental review. It's either on that list or it's not on that list. If they're not on that list, we call it unlisted. So initially we said, well, this is a type 1 action because it's changing the zoning for parcels greater than, for a collective of parcels greater than 10 acres. Because the sand mines are huge and that was how it was initially looked at. But when you really read it again, you're like, you're not really changing the zoning. You're not changing the zoning at all. It is residentially zoned. You're amortizing a non-conforming use. So then it comes off that list. It's no longer literally listed as changing zoning, because you're not. And it's not a type 2 action either. So it falls in the middle. So now you're unlisted, just so you know. However, that doesn't stop you. Unlisted, you could do a short form EAF and not go through this rigorous form. But in talking about this previously, the supervisor said you'd still want to look at the full form. So the full form is now what we're looking at, even though the action is unlisted.
So
Okay.
So are we treating it as almost treating it as a type 1?
You treat it as a type 1 by filling out the full breadth of the form. And then you'll know, then I'm going to explain to you what comes next through this whole process. So this is kind of fun for me because I never really get to do it like with the board like this. So it's fun. So we look at, the government approvals necessary for your action, which is this is your own legislative action. The
Where are you?
plan.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, on page 2.
Okay.
But when we noticed that it changed from type 1 to unlisted, but I didn't want anyone to think we were not giving it the full review.
Okay.
Right. And just so you know, it is my office that
Everyone's
classifies.
mics are muted.
Oh, okay. I'm just going to leave mine on.
Yeah, I'll turn it on. I forgot to turn it on when I spoke.
It is my office that classifies the action. So sometimes you'll see it say preliminarily classified because we're still researching it. But when it comes time for you to do the secret review, we usually have our answer.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes you'll see a resolution say preliminarily classified. It's because, and we usually err on the side of caution.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes it's either on that list or it's not.
That's why it was preliminarily
Classified as type 1.
and then you
But then,
reconsidered.
when you really think about it, you're not undertaking a zone change. You're undertaking an amortization of a non-conforming use. That's not the same thing. Okay, so back to our form. Page 2. Planning and zoning actions so it says, will administrative or legislative adoption or amendment, local law, ordinance, rule be the only approval which must be granted to enable the proposed action to proceed? And that answer is yes. If yes, complete sections C, F, and G.
Hold on, we only have part 2. So we have to go back to the battery page.
Yeah, it's just not,
He gave it.
it's okay.
I'm
We got it.
sorry.
It's okay, we got it.
These questions are answered on these forms that you're reading, but they're answered for battery storage. But we're answering right now for Sam. I didn't fill it in for you, so I was hoping he gave us he gave us part 2 by accident. It's okay.
So where are you now? At the B?
Page 2 of 13.
Uh-huh.
C, planning and zoning actions, right?
Mhm.
It's asking you, will administrative or legislative adoption or amendment of a plan, local law, ordinance, or rule be the only approval which must be granted to enable the proposed action to proceed? And that answer is yes. It says, if yes, complete sections C, F, and G. So C2 says, adopted land use plans. Do any municipally adopted comprehensive plans include the site where the proposed action will be located? That's a yes, because this isn't a site. This is a wholesale, area. Do our comp plans include sand mines? Is the question. And the answer is yes, they do. There's conversations about sand mines throughout all the various plans. If yes, does the comprehensive plan include specific recommendations? It says for the site where the proposed action will be located. It doesn't really. I would say no. In the East Quogue Hamlet area study, we may be able to find sections where it's talking about a specific site, but this isn't a specific thing. Sometimes these are written for, like, you're undertaking an action on this property, and you're undertaking an action that is relevant to many properties. So sometimes it's a little clunky when you have to answer the question. Okay, so is the site within any local or regional special district? Yes, because it's in the special groundwater protection area, right? I just wanted to bring you this is the actual book of special groundwater protection areas that was created, that all these laws
Can I
follow.
see that for a second?
Sure.
Thanks.
So it is, yes, and identify the plan, which is the Long Island Special Groundwater Protection Area Plan, right?
Who commissioned that?
That's from the Long Island Regional Planning Council. You may have heard of Lee Koppelman and the 208 study and all these groundwater studies that took place, and that's one of them.
Wow.
And this area was designated as this legislation is targeting mines that exist in these special districts. So yes, and that's what it's called. Is the project located within proposed action located wholly or partially within an area listed in an adopted municipal open space plan or farmland protection plan? So we have lists in our CPF plan talking about, so we may be able to say yes to that. I don't know if there's any specific property talked about in our CPF plan.
So here's my problem, just out of the gate here. We never really specifically identified what we're talking about, because we have testimony about one site. We have testimony about a site that's not included in this. The planning board's recommendations make it seem like they don't understand that we are targeting every sand mine, because they said you should look at other sand mines outside of the protection area. Mm-hmm. So we've had a public hearing and closed a public hearing, and nobody still concretely knows what sites we're talking about.
Well,
so
there's
we're
only 7 actual
this,
mines in the town.
but we're completing this, and we've never actually identified what we're even talking about.
You're talking about 7. We can give you the maps. Remember the maps that we've been reviewing through all of this?
We have testimony from the planning board talking about sites that aren't included.
Well, they were
They don't
talking about
understand that
taking all
it's every
non-conforming uses.
But what I'm saying is they don't understand that we're shutting down every single mine in the town.
I'm not sure that's true. You're the one that met with them, but they seemed like they wanted us to, they wanted us to amortize every non-conforming use in the town.
And they also said we should look at the sand mines outside of the groundwater protection area and look at those as well. And they didn't understand that we're shutting down all of the mines in the town. Not just the ones you keep saying it's just the ones in the groundwater protection area. It's all of them. They are all in the groundwater protection area. All of the existing mines are within this area, correct?
I think there's a couple, but they weren't really classified as mines anymore.
Used as
that
mines.
are not.
So
There are sand
There's
mines
still sand
outside of the
mines.
SGPA, but they're not necessarily still operating.
But this is a way, well, if it applied to them, it would,
It would apply to anybody in these special groundwater protection areas.
and residential.
I just
which
don't know
is
how
all the
you
same.
get into the secret process without first identifying exactly what you're talking about.
Well, that's important, and I think that you should. So we can give you maps and talk about the fact that we're talking about all 7 of these. The maps also, I'm not on the computer right now, but the maps also show the GIS layers for the special groundwater protection areas, and then we can give you like attachment that says these are the ones that are affected. If that is helpful, we could do that.
That would be good.
Yeah, I think
So-
it was
Yeah.
So
Clear which
spreadsheet
Was
plus
clear.
map.
I just want to clarify so that people who are listening, they understand what the questions are, and what you are saying is that we are looking at the existing mines in the town and where they lay in correspondence to the SGPA, the Special Groundwater Protection. And here in this graph shows the region, shows Southampton over here, and here is the Special Groundwater Protection. We are able to see where that overlay, in a sense, matches with the existing properties, right?
Correct.
Okay.
This plan is the comp plan
Right.
to enact
For the
that
region-
whole thing.
for the region.
Regionally.
Right.
And then each town created their own special ground,
So we're not-
actually the
this
state
isn't-
did, and then we map them.
So
We have
I just
shaped files.
I just want to be able to understand. So we're not in an arbitrary manner saying this one, this one, this one. We are actually corresponding our assessment of these mines with where this regional overlay exists. And I'm using that term overlay to kind of demonstrate just like what the layers are and what we're looking at in terms of the environmental sensitivity.
And I'm just clarifying that every active mine
Is within
is
the
within
SGPA.
that area, which means we are shutting down every active mine in the town.
When
Because
you-
there are
yeah.
people that think it's just the ones, I'm just trying to make this clear for everybody, that everyone thinks that it's just the ones that are in these protection areas. But I just want it clear, when you keep saying that it's every active existing mine.
It's the use. It's the use of mining, of actively mining would be amortized with a sunset period that would then be put into place by a zoning board of appeals. So you're creating a process around it. You're not like tomorrow it's all shut down. It's sort of like
Could
they
be
have to
7
go
years.
through a bit of a process to talk about
Transition.
transitioning out of it, selling equipment, depreciation, to various things that are allowed when you amortize a use, basically. So it is potentially in an open space plan, and we can give you a map and a spreadsheet, so we can talk about that. We have that information that we attach to this form.
That would be good. Yeah, just to also.
Right now, I'm trying to answer the questions.
yep.
And
You're
then
showing
we're
the
gonna
process of
show you
what
the
this-
process of what we look at, and it's painful. That's why we don't do this on everything. This is what we do downstairs, and then you review it and you say, "I agree," or "Hey, wait, number 10, I don't agree with that." But we go through this. This is what we do for you for every action you undertake.
Well, it's important to get everybody's input. So thank you for coming and
Yeah,
working
thank
through
you.
it with us.
Thank you.
Sure. So zoning. It says, is the site of the proposed action located in a municipality with adopted zoning law?
Yes, sometimes upstate in places they don't even have zoning, so we do. Then it asks where. What is the zoning? And I'm going to write in, the CR 200, whatever the zones are. And is the use permitted or allowed by special or conditional use permit? And the answer is no. It's a non-conforming use, so we know that. Is a zoning change requested as part of the proposed action? No, because we're not looking to change the zoning, right? And that's what took it off the type 1 list. Existing community services, we'll answer these questions. It's asking us school districts, police, fire, parks, etc. But it's not really applicable, but we'll answer it for all the ones we're talking about. Project details, I'm on page 3 now.
Mhm.
But what is the general nature of the proposed action? And then we'll fill that in. Total acreage. And see, this is starting to get back into site-specific details. Actually, wait. It says, yes, complete section C, F, and G. So I don't need D. I just have to skip to F. It's like doing your taxes.
Yeah. Oh,
This is F. What just happened?
We don't have enough.
Yes. Can I go on the computer? I can bring it up on there. I'm so sorry.
Kevin,
can he just bring up a regular form so we can mark it up ourselves, or?
one,
Yeah, I'm
Kevin,
gonna go on here.
this one.
Sorry.
Kevin, are you able to come in so we can see the computer that she's bringing up?
She's just gonna turn it up on there.
Okay. Thank you.
Put it on the TV. Please.
working on the other side. Now I know why they were complaining about this desk. This is just absolutely crazy. You can't.
Is it not working? Kevin, I'm sorry to ask you to come back, but it doesn't seem the computer is working.
Security.
Thank you.
And they turned off the mouse. Doing good there. Bear with me, I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Oh my God. I have all this as like links on my own thing, and so now I have to like look for it.
Can't read that anyway.
Is it easier just to ask?
I mean, it's probably easier for you to just sit here and
I
read it
did
to us,
ask him.
'cause
Okay.
He should be bringing it up anyway, but I'm
All right,
going
no worries.
still. I
it's
found
like
it.
we can't read any of that, Janice.
You can't read it. Well, I'm going to read it to you anyway, but he'll bring it. He's going to bring it up now. Okay. I'm sorry
go.
about this. So C.
So we're just doing F and G?
Oh, God. He said he's coming. All right.
You missed this?
Some things never change.
Here it is. EAF forms. For God's sakes.
Charlie's testimony about we had testimony from Aaron about
Secret forms. Finally. Okay. So I'm on C. We did C. We would then go skip to F.
Yeah, F and G. I think you want to give them those proclamations.
Oh, it does skip to part 2. F and G are just additional information and verification. So it does skip to the things you have. Sorry. All right, that's good. So now we're on this part 2. So here's the part 2. You have them. You have this. You have this part 2.
we have it?
Yes. F and G were just like signature pages. No, you just have a blank part 2 right now. You have a blank part 2 in front of you. Blank part 2, it says full EAF. It's this one.
So we were skipping.
We skipped. We didn't have to do part B. Here, this is the one we're doing now. See? Everybody sees this one? That's the new form, first page on the form you're on, Bill. we start with impact on land. So we do part 1, then we do part 2. So part 2 is, the full potential impacts. So the first question, impact on land. The proposed action may involve construction on or physical alteration of the land of the proposed site. Now, amortizing the use. So there is no physical construction taking place with your amortization law.
What about any sort of it's okay. Any sort of trucks or vehicles that need to take out sand or anything like that? Is that associated with?
That's not associated with your law.
Okay.
No. The answer is no.
Okay.
Right? So now we go to number 2. If the answer was yes,
If the answer's no, move to
you'd
2.
have to then go into like, well, how deep is the water table and what are you doing and how much are you taking out and what is the cubic yardage of, we're not doing any, this action is not causing anything to be removed. It's being caused to stay.
What
right?
what about any required remediation?
There is no required remediation by amortizing something.
No.
Impact on geological features. The proposed action may result in the modification or destruction of or inhibit access to any unique or unusual landforms on the site.
But wait, so you
like
have
the
this,
opposite.
you have these sites are all listed as opportunity areas for solar farms and other things.
Those aren't the action before you. That will be a secret for those actions. You're not speculating actions. The action you're taking is adopting a law, to my understanding, I haven't really been involved, is that you're looking to amortize non-conforming sand mines within a certain period of time. That's true?
I haven't been involved with this either, but if the law is presuming to encourage alternative uses.
It's not. It's saying you have to go to the ZBA.
How has our land use director not been involved in this?
Well,
I'm
you've
just
been
saying
involved.
I've
You've
been
reviewed
involved peripherally.
You read the
I
code.
recommended, a study be conducted where you would rather, let them apply to the ZBA to work out a schedule for amortization of this use. So we're not doing a land use study, you're just amortizing it. That's my understanding. So is that amortization resulting in the modification or destruction of any unique landforms? No. 3. Impact on surface water. The proposed action may affect one or more wetlands or other surface water bodies. I mean, I'm just answering these for you. Let me know if you think it's yes, and then we would go down further. So 3 is no. 4, impact on groundwater. The proposed action may result in new or additional use of groundwater or may have the potential to introduce contaminants to the groundwater or aquifer.
That's the opposite.
No. 5, impact on flooding. The proposed action, again, your proposed action is adopting this amortization law. May result in the development on lands that are subject to flooding.
Not gonna have development.
6, impact on air. The proposed action may include a state-regulated air emission source. 7, impact on plants and animals. The proposed action may result in a loss of flora or fauna.
Wait, you don't know you're saying no to impacts on air and no to impacts on plants and animals. The whole reason for this is maybe not the actual action, but the result of the action, which is more trucks on the roadway, which is, we don't know that. So how are you saying there's no impacts when you haven't studied the impacts?
So are you saying yes, and that if it were to be yes, the questions would then lead you to say, if the action requires federal or state air emission permits, you're exceeding those. The action may generate 10 tons more of any one designated hazardous air pollutant. The action may require a state air registration. The action may reach 50% of any threshold, A through C, or the action may result in the combustion of thermal treatment of more than 1 ton of refuse per hour. So I don't think any of those
It'd be less,
further details.
it'd be less trucks on the road.
So, but I don't have any other way to answer that unless, you're telling me you want that specific information, which I don't know. They have to go to the ZBA and create an amortization schedule, and then the ZBA will take an action and conduct secret at that point. So like secret still goes on with various boards. So like I couldn't say how many trucks because I don't have a specific
What does,
application.
I think,
This is going, so.
I just,
And you can't, it's gonna be less trucks on the road.
How? But that all happens at the ZBA, who is also taking an action and also has to conduct secret at that point. So if someone came in and said, well, I need to retain this for, so many years or whatever, I'm going to phase out, here's my trucks, this is, what I'm phasing out, they would do that analysis at that point.
Yeah.
Your time is whether or not your legislation is causing an impact on state regulated air emissions. And your answer is no at this point. At this point, you don't.
That way, is this having an, if you look at the question strictly, is the regulation that we're passing going to have an effect on state regulated air emission source?
Now, if
I
you
would
were
say no.
changing a code to allow some kind of truck depot, and now you're attracting all these trucks who are idling and creating this whole thing, your action would be potentially including a state emission problem. Because that's your action. You would be doing something. In this case, you're amortizing a use. That use will go away. Eventually, there's no trucks. You're going down to zero. So how are you impacting an air emission source? So that's no. I mean, unless
so are these, I guess one of the questions that I have is, are we considering these answers, or will planning be considering these answers in sort of the context of long term, right? Is this, are you looking at this as hypothetically this amortization law passes, here are the impacts, right? Is that correct? Is it a long term or is this a short term consideration?
Short-term consideration,
So-
because
so
a specific application, you're creating a structure for a specific sand mine owner to go to the zoning board of appeals and say, I need to keep this for some specified amount of time.
Right.
Or you're saying if you don't make that showing, it's 7 years or whatever your time. Well, that I think that was the right.
Yeah, once he does all the paperwork
But
and
if you
proves what he
don't
can
come
do.
and show that, then you're, unless it says unless shown otherwise. So it's considered that someone is coming in to show you the things that we typically in land use look at for an amortization schedule. The depreciation of equipment, how much they paid for in the property when they first got it, blah, 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 all the things. They go to they go to your zoning board of appeals. They look at all that, make a decision. At that point, they may say something about the trucks on the road or air emissions, but you're not saying that because
We don't care.
I don't know that you don't care. It's that it's not germane to your action now.
What's germane to our action now is testimony we received. We received testimony about additional traffic on the roadways. We received testimony from our highway superintendent about the potential impacts to our budget and the cost of maintaining our roadways.
That's not an impact on air.
That's not an impact on
This is a
General.
general because I can see where this is going, and I mean it's already going there, and it's where it's going to go, and it's going to be what it's going to be. But we had a public hearing. We had specific questions that were raised that we told people we were going to get the answers to: traffic, costs on construction, all of these things. Maybe you can whitewash that however you want. It doesn't. No, I'm not not you specifically, but we can say that this is not going to. What we're doing is not going to affect everything. The ZBA is going to figure out how it's going to affect everything.
Well, it's not.
We're kicking the can to them.
But you have literally, and I'm not, you are the lead agency. So you are voting on this action now. The action you're proposing to take is to end the unlimited time frame associated with a non-conforming use. You want to put timeframes around that issue.
Just creating a process.
So
That's what we're
if you
doing.
want to put timeframes around an issue to phase out a use, you're allowed to do that.
And
you're saying this action doesn't have these impacts because we're phasing it out to zero. You're not adding new things, you're taking them away. You're saying, well, by taking them away, we're changing our industry. But those are economic considerations. These are environmental impacts that we're looking at right now.
and we had a couple of sand mines that actually say that 80% of all their sand goes west. So this sand's going out of Southampton town, and you're going to have less traffic because you don't have 80% of the sand going there.
And I would just say to Bill's point, and Cindy, I'm just saying that there was a lot of testimony, and we received testimony with a lot of different perspectives. As you referenced some, I think there's perspectives that say otherwise as well. But, you know, my question is really on the specific parameters of this form. You know, particularly Part 2, Section 1, the impact on land. I'm just wondering, you know, can we say with confidence that any proposed action here with respect to amortization wouldn't cause any physical alteration of the land? I mean, we don't necessarily know that. We don't know what, for instance, the zoning board of appeals may recommend, and we don't know what each specific.
It's very, very specific. Is your action right now causing a machine to make some impact on a piece of property?
Amortization itself.
Yes.
Okay.
Your action is amortization. There is no other, you know, all the downstream effects, which you're talking about, are important if there's an environmental impact. But your action is to set a parameter around a time frame for someone to phase out a use. So what are the environmental impacts of that?
It's up to them to bring it back to us with, say, how long it's going to take them.
Right, but as far as the environmental impact, you're saying, does the proposed action involve construction on or physical alteration of the land surface of a proposed site?
Right.
Not now.
No.
You have to look at it very logically and pragmatically. But we can, you know, if you wanted to say, well,
I don't think I'm looking at it illogically, Janice.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to imply that. But I'm just saying it's very pragmatic.
I just want to see in terms of what we're saying the legislative action is going to do. I just want to make sure we're being, fully, we're fully understanding the scope of what amortization could potentially implicate. Obviously I get what you're saying, and the sheer pure action of amortization, what amortization seeks to do is very specific, yes. But are there specific actions that could come from amortization?
Look at the rest of it and see what it says. If you were to say yes, okay, well then, does the proposed action involve construction on land where the depth to water table is less than 3 feet?
Which one are you looking at now? 7?
If you said, well, maybe it does have an impact on land, we're back to page 1. If you want to say, maybe what we do does have an impact on land, well, then it drills into, no pun intended, what impact would you have here? Are you involving the construction on land? No. Are you involving construction on slopes, 15% or greater? No. Are you involving construction on land where bedrock is exposed? No. Are you involving excavation and removal of more than 1,000 tons of natural material? No, they're already doing that. You're trying to say they can't do that.
Right.
The proposed action may involve construction that continues for more than a year or in multiple phases. It's already happening that way. Or you could say, is that a large impact? That the impact would be, we're still letting this go on for another 7 years potentially. Does it result in increased erosion from physical disturbance of vegetation removal? No, because all their reclamation plans require replanting. The proposed action located in a coastal erosion hazard area? No. So even if you want to say yes to that, the follow-ups don't lead you to
the subsequent sections. Okay.
So,
thank you for explaining that. I think,
problem.
and I think it's important also for just the people to, who are watching to also understand that, because I don't think they're not seeing this form either. So, but
We're jumping around on them.
So that's
thank you for
all-
explaining that.
Sure, no problem. So that was impact on air, land, but back to impact on air. We're talking about emissions again, and I think that the impacts are no. So impact number 7, impact on plants or plants or animals.
Will it have a loss of flora or fauna?
The answer I would say is no. In fact, you'll gain because you're going to end up with a reclamation plan revegetating.
Well, that's a
Building
long.
houses, I mean,
So it's a long-term question. I mean, that's a long-term consideration.
It's saying, is this action causing someone to go out and take away an ecology of an area, the flora and fauna? And that answer is no. You're not doing that, right? You're saying, come in and show us when this is going to end.
Mm-hmm.
Like how to get to an end point.
Mm-hmm.
That's not taking away flora or fauna.
And it converts then to the underlying, it's
So,
gonna yell at me. It converts then to the underlining zoning,
right.
which is presumed to have been in compliance with secra.
So then number 8 is impact on agricultural resources. These mines do not occur in ag lands, so the answer there is no. Number 9, impact on aesthetic resources. I would say no, but the question is the land use from the proposed action are obviously different from or in sharp contrast to current land use patterns between the proposed project or a scenic or aesthetic resource. So the answer is no. You'd actually probably be moving toward conformity, and that's the idea of amortization. 10, impact on historical and archaeological resources. The proposed action may occur in or adjacent to a historic or archaeological resource. 11, impact on open space and recreation. The proposed action may result in a loss of recreational opportunities. In fact, our comp plan on some of these says that we should convert this to BMX or some kind of trails or things. So I think that answer would be no, because you have opportunity potentially to convert some of these to recreational resource. Impact on critical environmental areas. The proposed action may be located within or adjacent to. Yes, the answer is yes. In this case, a CEA, a critical environmental area is SGPA. So the answer is yes there. But then it says, the proposed action may result in a reduction in the quantity of the resource or characteristic, which was the basis for the designation. No. So that would be no, or small impact. The proposed action may result in a reduction in the quality of the resource. No, because when the stated goal is to protect the groundwater in these locations. 13, impact on transportation. The proposed action may result in a change to existing transportation systems. That's your answer.
Yes.
So the answer may be yes, if everyone agrees. The A, proposed traffic increase may exceed capacity of existing road network. You don't know that. You don't know what the projected traffic increase is. So you can say no or small impact, or you could say moderate to large. We're talking about 2 active mines at this point in 2 different locations. B, the proposed action may result in the construction of paved parking for 500 or more vehicles. No. The proposed action will degrade existing transit access. No. The proposed action will degrade existing pedestrian or bicycle accommodations. No. The proposed action may alter the present pattern of movement of people or goods. And then this is your question. Is that no, it won't, or a small impact, or moderate to large? And if you wanted to say, now I just want to explain some more on secra here, how we do this. If it's no or small, you're moving toward, I don't need further information. If it's moderate or large, you're moving toward, I need more information.
Right.
So you have to make a decision as the lead agency, and then in our part 3, the rationale would explain the basis for your decision. So you have to think about
It's not gonna,
those things.
movement of people or goods, it's not gonna
So you're talking about the movement of sand in a dump truck somewhere.
Construction is one of our biggest industries out here.
Right.
It's not gonna alter it.
But is it going to alter the present pattern?
Yeah.
No.
It's going to
You're
have
gonna have
less
more trucks
trucks, but
coming
you're
from the
not
west.
changing the roadway or creating an overpass.
I see where this is going. So I'm
The
not even-
trucks coming from the west would be awash versus the
Joke.
trucks going to the
Absolute joke.
east.
So basically when we're at a point where some boards, we've had this at the planning board, the full board doesn't agree on some of these answers. You can poll the board, whether you want to say yes or no. I can, I just want direction. So
Well, is the question that, and I think this is just the more global question that we have to really think about, is the question really, is amortization going to lead to more traffic? Or as it exists now with the existing sand mines, is there already existing traffic that is occurring now that could potentially decrease with the amortization of the sand mines? I mean, I understand the question too. Could it increase? Because now we're going to be potentially, the question is, are we going to be now getting sand deliveries from from other parts of the region that are coming east, right? I think that's what your concern is. But
That takes it off of local roads and keeps it on, it may not be, you may have a decreased impact.
You're not gonna have
if
it in
you're
the
taking it off a
the
local road.
in the neighborhoods.
Right.
You're only gonna bring the sand in as you need it, and it's gonna be a long time before you feel it.
So you would answer no, the proposed or small impact. I'm sorry, I know it's upsetting, like.
We don't know
sometimes
because there's no study.
Right.
There's absolutely no study, so we have no idea. We're going off of what people think is gonna happen. I mean, we've never done an amortization in this town's history without a study.
If the sand comes from a truck that originates out of town or in, I think the two active mines are in East Quogue, they're still driving on Sunrise Highway either way. So the east side of the canal, it doesn't really make a difference if it's coming from East Quogue or Yaphank, right? Like it's just still driving on Sunrise Highway to us.
still driving, yeah. That's a good point,
So
Janice.
I'm not sure I understand the part where we would study, when they come in, we can't force people to tell us how many trucks per hour they put on the road at this point if they're not making an application to us. But when they come into an application realm, which you're trying to create, and now they're at the ZBA, they must tell us those kinds of information so that we can
How many
assess
trucks
it.
you got?
From your knowledge, Janice, are in previous amortization efforts? I mean, what was the extent of traffic studies as per other amortization efforts?
The only other amortization effort I've been here for was the nightclubs, and that was basically a sort of same idea, map, data, gathering phase of how many are there, what are they called, where are they, Jet East and whatever, the one up that's still on the highway here in Tuckahoe and Dream and all these ones, they all had different names back in the day.
Brendan's?
Yeah. So it was an inventory and it was how many complaints were registered, things along those lines because it was a nuisance. It was a community that came together and said, this is a nuisance and we want it to go
And we had
away.
amortization of signs too.
An amortization of signs, which still is, yes, we had that, but you keep extending the sunset for those. But
So-
yeah.
So what was the extent of those traffic studies? You just
Well, there was
surveyed...
not a traffic study related to those uses. It was more about the noise, the public drunkenness, let's call it, or there was a lot of code enforcement reports around these things that said these are a nuisance. It was one thing when it was all farms, but now all these people live here and you can't have that there anymore. And so it went away. In some instances, the town bought the property, like Jet East in North State.
Yeah, and that was one of the things the planning board said here with the sand mines, that they were suggesting instead of, if somebody said, we need 7 years, well, maybe they want, what's the value of that time? And then maybe the town wants to purchase the property.
Right. Okay, so that's transportation. Impact on energy is that the proposed action may cause an increase in the use of any form of energy. Now, will your amortization cause an increase in the use of any form of energy? I don't see how. It just doesn't. The impact on noise, odor, and light I'm sorry. It says the proposed action may result in an increase in noise, odors, or outdoor lighting. No. And number 16, the impact on human health.
Not noise.
Well, you're amortizing something, so theoretically it's going to end. The noise is going down as you phase it out.
What about I know I brought this up before. What about remediation?
That's part of their use. It's not called remediation, it's called reclamation.
Reclamation.
And that's part of the use that they're involved in right now. So that's part and parcel with what they're doing requires a reclamation plan. We're not instituting a law saying something about a reclamation
Understood.
plan
Okay.
that causes noise, odor, or light.
Oh, wait, so they all have reclamation plans in place, right? So
You
once,
can't have a mining permit without a reclamation plan. They go hand in hand.
so once, if the amortization period expires, then they have to
They have to
implement
do
it
their implementation
That's
of
already
their plan.
on
Yeah.
file, yeah.
And we don't get in the middle of that because that's the state that is preempted us on those plans. They are in that field. They do that.
Or some of them are so old that now different uses are available.
For them.
like solar, if somebody, can they go back to the state and say, that wasn't part of the reclamation plan, but
The
I want to change
reclamation
it?
plan is always the same, and that is to ensure like
Slopes on the
the
side.
slopes and the revegetation. There is no use associated with a reclamation plan.
Oh, I see.
You don't even know how to go.
The impact on
Don't
human
even know
health.
what?
How reclamation of my mines work. I mean, this is like,
No, I haven't actually seen the reclamation plans, but that's something
Not
that
much
the
to
DEC
see. They show you a slope and like vegetation.
Yeah.
Like they're just, hey, you're gonna extract this sand, this mineral, this resource out. And then what are you gonna do when you're done? We're gonna stabilize the slopes and we're gonna vegetate it.
Mhm.
And then that's it. That's reclamation. There's no like, oh, and then we're gonna turn it into that turns into land use.
But-
And
but-
then-
but-
Then they'd have to come
That's
to the
another step
town.
for them.
Yeah.
so why don't we do this through incentive zoning? I mean, instead of amortizing and taking away use, why don't we come up with what we want these things to be and start from there?
You still can do that. No one's stopping you from doing that. You can still do that. You
Yeah,
guys
and
are the
that's why we-
legislative body.
yeah,
So you
we
can
were-
say this use is going away, and here's all the things we want to do with sand mines and
Yeah.
conduct your
You can come-
rezoning and studies and anything
the-
else you want to
The
do.
owners can
and
come back
after.
to us with the different ideas to get rezoned.
And some of them did already. One of them
Yeah.
came in and wanted to do solar.
But the problem is we're amortized, we're taking away a use without putting these other uses. Like, we're looking at a comp plan update, right? So this is the perfect opportunity to look at all of these sites and say, what would function here? What would work here? Because, I'm telling you right now, we can build all of the housing in the world that we want. If you sat on the roads today to come to work like I did, yes, there's some teachers and some doctors and some professional people coming to work. But for the most part, it's trade contractors, it's trucks. And if those businesses have nowhere to function here, which they're pushing into our ag reserves currently, what are we gonna do? We're still gonna have that traffic. You can put all the workers out here, but if the businesses are based in the west because there's nowhere for businesses to function here, because the land values have gone up and LI 40 has just morphed into more housing and other uses that we don't want. I mean, these to me are perfect examples of places where, it's pretty much a hole in the ground, right? Perfect places for trade contractors with worker housing above those trades. I mean, these are smart things that we should be thinking about.
Those are zoning changes you can still do. This is an amortization of this type of use. so
Why
that you
go
then-
through amortization? Why not go through what do we want to see
That's
here
a question
and
for your
work with
colleagues.
these two mine owners too to come up with a plan for what we want to see on these sites and work with them to incentivize them to change their use instead of putting the ZBA and all of these owners through all of this process of getting rid of a use with nothing in place to replace it other than CR 200.
We still can. After this is all done, they can come back and say, hey, I want to put housing, workforce housing, I want to build 20 units for landscapers and painters and whatever kind of contractors want to work out of there.
You could rezone things to LI 40. You just have to remember that these locations are in the special groundwater protection area. So whatever use
Careful.
you do choose, you want to
Yeah.
make sure it's compatible with the groundwater
The groundwater
concerns.
and protect the neighborhood too.
So
We don't have to do a code for incentive zoning. They can come in like one of them already
Yeah.
did and say, no, I feel like I don't want to go through this whole thing and I still want to get value out of the property, so I'd like to do this kind of a project.
you can set up how you want people to come in and pitch whatever,
Totally up to
or
them.
on
No
your
one's
own
taking-
motion, you can say, let's do a study of these properties and see what the community wants to see there and go through that planning effort.
And it's
Whatever
not
you
just
wanna
the
do.
two, it's all seven, because, who knows what the rest of them are doing, and they might want to, change the use, or they might be doing something that we're not.
It just comes down to
Pleased
like
with.
most of the sand mines were rezoned to 5-acre zoning, and then now looking at that and saying, is that appropriate? You have one in front of you, or will be back soon. The the asphalt plant that was an LI 40. It got rezoned to CR 200. 5-acre zoning, and now you're looking at it and going, it doesn't make any sense. We should put it back to LI 40. Like you can, change things. Nothing has to stay stuck.
Well, we're shutting down the sand mine, of course.
Yeah. So
But right now, the 5 we don't have any right to access the property and we can't enforce the reclamation, right? But with this, we can, they'll have to come to us and show us what they're doing.
Yep.
So this really affects all of them.
Amortization is a land use tool that you can employ to remove non-conforming uses that you no longer want. And that is presumably why you're doing this, because this use is not wanted or seen as beneficial or whatever the reasons over the groundwater, and that's what you're saying. I'm just going by if that's what the law is doing, then this is what the secret goes with it. That's all. I have a little thing about amortization, and it says the validity. The amortization technique sometimes is described as more of a postponement than a solution, to your point.
Where is this from?
This is from a paper about how to determine an amortization period in land use.
Okay.
And it has, from Washington University, it has the virtue of cushioning the economic shock. It has the vice of delay. Courts have held that the validity of application of an amortization technique need not depend on exact compensation for all economic loss. In order to be a reasonable exercise of police power, the termination process must mitigate the private loss by allowing an owner a reasonable period to recoup his investment in the nonconforming use. And that's why you see those standards in your code about talking to the ZBA about the, hey, but I just bought all this equipment and I need to, whatever it is. It says the process of determining the amortization period is not merely a matter of accountability, it is rather a balancing test, weighing the private cost against the public gain. And also considered is the magnitude of the cost to the owner and its economic impact on the business and individuals concerned. So that is what you're doing when you put them at that ZBA. Those conversations happen there. You're just creating a process by which
Platform.
it can happen. And public testimony can be taken, and all told, the ZBA will say, okay, it's reasonable to allow this to phase out by such and such a date. And then they'll establish that date, because you don't know the specifics at this point.
And no one's taking the property away. They can use it for something else.
Right, and that's what Councilwoman McNamara is talking about. What's the something else, and how do you conclude what that is? And that's further planning necessary.
I just think it's wrong that we had a full public hearing process. And during that public process, it was mentioned that this would be a type 1 action. There'd be the study done on impacts to costs and impacts to transportation. And that was all said during the public hearing process. Everyone kind of stopped talking about those things because during that public hearing process, we said it was going to be type 1 action and we said all the things to be studied. And now we've closed the public hearing and now it's going to just.
Well, we're treating it like a type 1 by doing the long form.
Right.
We're treating it like
the same form you would be reviewing if it was a type 1. So you're still doing that.
Which is because
So
we
the
were
question is,
concerned
if you
that
don't have all these large impacts and the right column being checked, you're leading toward this is not going to have an impact. If all these are yes, and all these things, then we lead toward an environmental impact statement. And the environmental impact statement, by the way, is not a negation of the project. It's the assessment of what those impacts are and how they can be mitigated. And can they be mitigated sufficiently so that the project can move forward? So impact on human health. The proposed action may have an impact on human health from exposure to new or existing sources of contaminants. No. So I think, and then, there's two more. 17, consistency with community plans. The proposed action is not consistent with adopted use plans. That's not so. It is consistent because your adopted plans have been talking about phasing out non-conforming uses over time. So that's that. And 18, consistency with community character. The proposal is inconsistent with the existing community character. If it's not, right?
Yeah.
So you've now had a front row involvement with part 1 and part 2. Part 3 is the sort of paragraph or verbal reasoned elaboration, which we don't have here, but all that you've said we'll put into a bit of a narrative, and that is your reasoned elaboration.
Janice, let me ask you a question. If one of these questions triggered a yes, just hypothetically, right? What would be the next step from your office? Like what would
Do
be
a part
done?
three. A part three. The yes doesn't trigger an environmental impact statement in and of itself. It's that you would then say, wait a minute, is there a moderate or large impact? What is that? And can it be mitigated?
Would potentially a triggering of a yes also require some kind of study, for instance?
You are the lead agency, so you can direct any study that you want. Or you can say it doesn't require a study because it's intuitive, because we know that, these things, whatever those things are.
I just want to know in terms of the process how things like if things were to say we yes, there's
You could say that we don't have enough information.
what kind of analysis is done from your standpoint?
In the planning
It
board
would be
realm,
further
sometimes
evaluation.
we'll say we need further evaluation. You can say that you need further evaluation at any step in this process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. So you asked me to come and go over this form collectively, so it was on camera and everyone could go through it. And sure. So I'll prepare the part three basically, and then you'll vote on it. And not everybody agrees on that, but you obviously the majority rules. So thanks. I guess.
Thank you, Janice.
So no problem. Have a nice day.
Okay, so that brings us to our supervisor, town council member liaison updates. Bill, do you have any updates today?
Town board.
So now we're doing the town council and supervisor liaison updates. Bill, do you have anything for us today?
Not that.
Well, I'll just say we were at the some of us were at the Southampton parade last Saturday, and it was a lot of fun. And we have the Hampton Bays parade coming up this Saturday at 11. I'm looking forward to that. Michael?
We joined you in a meeting with Mayor Menger. Talked about some water quality projects that we're looking at. And I will say that I believe we have a work session on March 27th, right? That is the date that we will be being introduced to the Traffic Mitigation Safety Task Force's final report. We'll hear from the co-chairs, Tom Neely and Charlie McCardle, as well as some of the other members. I'm hoping Chief and Ryan Murphy will be able to make it, Tom Houghton. And we'll take a look at it. We'll be introduced to the board. And I do want to thank Christine Scalera for all her efforts to helping the process move along. I know it was a little bit of a grueling process, just a lot of meetings and a lot of gathering of information throughout the writing of the task force. I have to thank Tom Neely for putting a lot of effort into making sure we got all of it together. And it's coming along nicely, and everybody will be able to read it once it's introduced to the board, and we'll have it on for adoption, right?
So what is it, like existing conditions and then comments received and then maybe a section on proposed changes?
Yeah, and it's very global in the sense of looking at what the traffic situation is, looking at County Road 39, but also taking a look at some of the roads of concern or roads of note. Those are our secondary roadways or neighborhoods. Some of the different approaches to mitigation that we've tackled throughout the process of the task force, working with Chief, increasing enforcement, investing in more speed monitors, looking at a variety of other, techniques. We look at the blinking signal program, looking at where that could be expanded, looking at also some long-term infrastructure changes as well that could be potentially implemented, some of the things that we have talked about at the task force meetings. So there's a whole host of different categories and sections that will be covered, and the goal will be to hopefully bring the board up to speed on what the current situation of traffic is in the town of Southampton, which I think we all kind of know what it is. But it'll kind of highlight all of it, and I think will point us, hopefully, in the direction of considering, and I think this is something that we've all kind of talked about in different ways, a comprehensive traffic master plan that I think will be very necessary at some point for us to start thinking about a comprehensive approach to mitigation, because we've handled throughout the task force process, and I think throughout the town board's evaluation of some of these matters, we've dealt with this, and guilty as charged, in a piecemeal fashion. Oh, well, this issue came to us, we looked at it, we dealt with it, but do we, and I think I learned this at the Association of Towns, should we be thinking about this in a much more comprehensive way, so that we're dealing with speed, dealing with congestion in a way that doesn't conflict? Because one of the things I think this task force did certainly understand was that the congestion on 39 and congestion in other areas too, has led to other traffic problems. It's all integrated. It's all related. So one of the things I think this board is going to really have to consider is what next steps we take for a comprehensive approach to fixing some of these,
Right,
these
'cause
issues.
we're not just
And it's
focusing on 39. This is throughout the town.
Right, in a systematic way. Certainly, I believe, and I think this is what the report will focus on, is some of these short-term fixes that I think are very, very good. I mean, we're actually, Councilwoman McNamara and I were at the Hampton Bays CAC meeting last night, and we heard from a constituent who mentioned how the speed monitors are very good. They're working.
Yeah,
and,
they are.
and I met with some folks in the Shinnecock Hills area. They say the same thing, that it's working. So there's some short-term things that we need to keep continuing, but we also need to think long-term for real structural changes that will help improve the quality of life.
Like if this new pilot program works that we're trying out next month, where how can we make some changes to the road itself instead of having to pay for all the overtime staffing, but we'll see what happens.
Right, we'll see what happens, and we'll hear from everybody, and I apologize for dominating the conversation.
No, it's fine, thank you. Cindy, do you have an update?
Yeah, I had a meeting this week with Ryan Murphy, and I met with Chief Kiernan and members of the police department to discuss the emergency communications with the town. The more we delve into it, the more we find that we're going to it really needs more of an overhaul than we thought it did. We did put an emergency, not an emergency, but a immediate response is that Ryan Murphy now has access to the system to put out notifications, which they both said that, Chief and Ryan both said they would have, liked to have had the ability to put out more information, during the fire. And it was a really good, it was a one-day event, and it showed us where we need work. And, it was a good thing, because we're finding some things that we can really change and work on to get more notifications to people, ways that we think we can change our emergency notification system as a whole, just to make the sign-up process easier, to make sure that people are defaulting to emergency texts and messages. So there's other things. We're going to have a whole, basically a concerted effort to get a plan in place, more so than right now they do have access. They can get on it and they can put out the notifications, but we want to make it a multi-pronged, how can we make the system better, kind of like what the county has with their E911 system, where they have that alert system capability, and it may actually end up being an upgrade to our current Notify Me, where the Notify Me ends up being used more for town updates, because when you go on that site, there's so many things you can sign up for that we may want to discuss having a separate emergency notification system that's outside of the Parks and Rec and all of those updates, because it is so important that people get information, and especially now with social media and people posting misinformation, and then it just kind of snowballs. So it was a good meeting. It was a start. We're definitely going to be recommending some changes and some upgrades. And then the only other thing I have is the deadline for the Hometown Heroes banner program is April 1st. If anybody wants to order a banner.
Well, whatever, the group comes up with and the chief and Ryan think are improvements, we can certainly make them happen. We just need, that's a good opportunity now in hindsight to look back and say, how can we do better? So we look forward to getting that information from them. And then you expanded the Hometown Heroes banner program, right? Now it's not just you,
It's just the park. We're leaving it at the park this
but
year.
I mean the people who qualify.
Oh, yes, the honorees can be either residents themselves or family members of residents.
That's good. All right.
Next year.
Yeah. So then it's time for us to end our meeting here today. And I need a motion to go into executive session for personnel acquisitions and litigation, and then we'll close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.